All right, in this video, we're going to talk about infectious disease transmission. So obviously the way in which, say, what's this one, E. coli is transmitted to a person is going to be very different to, say, chlamydia, right? So it's really important that even this picture here shows so many different ways in which a disease that is infectious, that can be passed from one person to another very easily, as opposed to, say, genetic disease. There's so many different ways, and some very creative, some not so much. Okay, so the main ones we're going to look at in this particular video, and keep in mind this is a really wordy video. I'm not going to read them all out, but if you want to pause at any time and write some stuff down, that would be ideal. Direct contact, indirect contact, droplet contact, airborne, fecal oral, and vectorborne. I don't think there's the delightful video of someone sneezing in this PowerPoint, but I will endeavour to find that one. Right, direct contact, really straight away, very simple, requires physical contact between an infected person and a susceptible person. So in this particular case, the chlamydia there is, a perfect example of something like that, because we're talking here about touching, kissing, sexual contact, contact with oral secretions, or contact with body lesions, so an open wound or something like that. So very common for sexually transmitted infections to pass this way. And there we go. It says unable to survive for long periods without a host, meaning it has to jump and get directly onto that susceptible individual first, because it has to have somewhere to live and usually a moist environment to be able to survive and get its nutrients. Indirect contact, exactly opposite of that, in that those kinds of infectious agents can stay on a surface for a very long period of time. So the situation is where the susceptible person is infected from contact with a contaminated surface. So you think about how gross the desks at school are, the handles in your bathroom, the taps in your bathrooms, things like that. It's pretty common to want to blend 20 it all and disinfect it all quite regularly, and particularly if you've been sick regularly, it's a good idea to go and clean down your house because of these kinds of pathogens. So frequent touch surfaces, including door handles, handrails, bathroom and kitchen surfaces, keyboards. Yeah, your keyboards are pretty nasty, and I would make sure you clean them off regularly, particularly if you are sick, because those organisms are capable of surviving on a surface for an extended period of time, which is disgusting to think about. Right, droplet contact is how we'll get something like this, Bordetella pertussis, or your cough. Or what have we got here? We've got swine flu. Okay, swine flu is pretty easily contractable, as well as chickenpox, right? So it occurs when infected droplets make contact with the eyes, nose, and the mouth. So you've got to think about any mucous membrane, which is an open part of your body. It might be in your head, might be anywhere else in your body, but what that is known as, if it's regularly open, a mucous membrane. And it will have different types of immune cells there to assist it, because it is regularly in contact with the outside world and therefore other pathogens. Right? So generally generated when an infected person coughs, sneezes and talks. So they talk about how the most effective way to stop a sneeze from getting out is to do the dab, to sneeze into your elbow, and they also say it's destroy all bacteria, DAB. All right, airborne transmission is part of that, and it occurs when particles containing microorganisms are suspended into the air. So we're talking particles, it might be droplets or anything like that. Guys are a bit tougher in that they can survive long periods of time out of the body and are resistant to drying. So say you've coughed here we go, chickenpox, beautiful example. So we've coughed our chickenpox out, that droplet can stay on a surface and they can survive without being in that host straight away, which is pretty terrifying if you're thinking about working with children who have chickenpox and all those kinds of things. So that's why they talk about you've got to let your entire class know if one kid in the class has chickenpox, because it's really able to stick around. The organisms enter via the respiratory tract, and that's really most of where these types of particles enter from. When we're talking about coughing, sneezing, we're breathing them in, they're going through our nose, through our mouth. So even though there's parts of our body that try and stop that from happening or stop these pathogens from getting in, they will eventually do it. Oral transmission, this is where we're going to get our E. coli's, right? Our E. coli's are going to happen because they're passing through our digestive system. Delightful Bristol stool chart here talking about if you need to go to the doctor and describe your feces, that's pretty much how they do it. So we're talking about organisms now that are infecting the digestive system. So you're talking about your diarrheas and your vomitings, your food poisonings, Microorganisms enter the body through contaminated food or water. If you're traveling overseas, quite often they tell you to either boil the water or just go and buy bottled water. And that can be easy to remember if you're just having a drink. But if you're doing something like brushing your teeth, you often forget and you've swallowed a mouthful of tap water and you go, oh no, what am I going to do? Sometimes your body might be able to go fight it off. Sometimes you might feel that effect. So, they talk about barley belly quite often. Because some countries are, firstly, heaps of tourists, and secondly, more likely for you to be getting those bugs in the water system. Not going to happen in Australia. Now, vector-borne transmission is really interesting because we're talking parasites here, and those vectors are transportation systems. So vectors are animals capable of transmitting the diseases, and we're talking flies, mites, ticks, rats. Mozzies are a really big one. They transmit things like malaria in areas that are tropical and there's a lot of mosquito growth or reproduction. So in areas where there's really still water, so around a really still creek or something like that, you have huge amounts of insect population and therefore potential for malaria. And it can travel really large distances. So we're no longer just talking about sneezing and spraying something out. We're talking about a bug, picking it up and flying it around and potentially landing on multiple people and infecting multiple different organisms, not just humans as well. So not just spread through biting, but also through touching or fecal matter. So there's really no escaping it. And that means they can really spread it far and wide. Right, so that's really going to sum up most of our transmission of infectious disease.